Welcome back to Allison Customs Project Car TV. I'm Jeff Allison, and thank you for watching.
And as you'll notice right here along this door jamb, I can get this held steady here for you. So right along the door jamb here, I actually ended up rolling the, putting the roll bar in a roller, a tubing roller, and rolling a slow curve in there to keep that gap even all the way down. And at the bottom I kick it out just a little bit, that way I can weld around the back side and have plenty of room to tuck the carpet in, and that as we finish the interior later. It was in nice and tight. Then I left one of the headliner bows in there so that I could keep working the arch along the top as well. I ran that through the roller and got it to pretty well match the bow in the roof. It's probably just a little bit low, but that'll make a little more room for the headliner itself. And back down the other side there. Also got one of the down bars for the rear made and mounted in. It follows the headliner again in the back. Get the glasses out of the way. Follows down the back, it comes right down even with the back window. Oh, there's a little shadow on that. So we can lighten that up a little bit. As it comes down into the trunk area, passed through there, I'll clean that up a little bit more. And then I haven't made the lower mount yet where it's going to mount off the frame. I'll run a kicker out here until I get out to the tubing, and then I'm going to box it in and make some boxes here that'll hold. Probably on the passenger side I'll put the battery, and on the driver's side here maybe a storage compartment for something. I haven't really decided yet, but there's plenty of area there. Fuel tank will go between the rails here and clear in this area here. So next up is make another tube to match. I guess it's actually a mirror. It's got to match at the top, but then as it comes down it kicks over, and going to make a mirror to that for this other side. So I'll get you on the tripod and we'll start bending some tube again. Okay, so the method I like to use for bending up a roll bar when it's something really complicated or just has a lot of shape to it, if it's just a main hoop, which you're going to have some straight legs and maybe one extra bend up there at about the elbow height or something, I draw it out on paper, figure out my measurements, and go ahead and bend it up. But something like this, where this rear tube has to kick down, I'm taking some 1/4-inch rod and let me flip it the right way. So starting at the main hoop of the roll bar, come down, and I took measurements, and then I bend up this 1/4-inch rod and fish it through there until I get a nice even. I'm trying to hit about the center line of the tube where I want it to go, and then I can adjust my angles until I'm happy with it. And then I can grab me I use a digital angle finder, but whichever type you happen to have, and I can measure my angles. I think this one was for down here. Measure all these different angles and then write them down, and then I have a build sheet, essentially, of what I'm actually trying to bend up. And get my tubing, and I know where my bends are going to go and what angles they all have to go at. So this was for the driver's side. You're going to make a mirror of this for the passenger side, and really the only change is then in this bend here, where after it comes through the rear deck before it gets to the trunk floor. So I know what this angle is and which direction. All I got to do is reverse that when I go the other way on this new tube. So we're going to start bending that up and let you watch. So what I'm starting with is that after measuring out that 1/4-inch rod to get the length I needed, I had a piece of tubing left over from when I made the main hoop that I just cut it in half, and it leaves it just a couple inches long on the far end. I'm taking my measurements, and what I do is I mark where I want the bend, and then with my tubing bender with this particular die set, I need to subtract 3/4 of an inch for the where to line it up to get the die started. So I mark that, and then move down and do the next bend. Okay, once you get all your marks bent from your list, I like the mark where I'm actually going to line up my die. I like to mark it all the way around the tubing, so as I rotate the tubing, it doesn't matter. I don't have to go looking for my mark. And, for me, the easiest way to get a nice straight line all the way around the piece of tubing is to use a piece of paper. Just line up one of the factory edges from the paper after I've cut off a little slip. Use that as my guide. And a nice straight line all the way around. So I'm going to do that all. I think there's 4 bends here. I'm going to do that on all these. Last thing I like to do is, so I don't forget which way is up or the top, I put a couple arrows on here so that as I'm laying that into the tubing bender, I don't accidentally swap ends or something. And then the last thing, because this particular roll cage is not made out of DOM, it's made out of just a welded seam tube. That seam sometimes will show up in the primer and stuff unless you get a real heavy coat on there. So I try and hide that seam as much as possible. So in this case, that seam's going to roll towards the inside where the sail panel and well, basically the sail panel and the side of the headliner. So you never really can see it. If it was pointed straight up like that, when you looked through the back window, you might see that little rib. Like I said, you got to get that seam oriented the right way. So for me, for this to be a passenger side tube, that seam needs to be pointed in the bender here straight up. So as that comes out, and that with the tube bending this way, that will allow, once it's bent, that'll actually be the first down turn coming off the main hoop. So by putting that straight up, that makes it the right hand side. So basically the piston on this bender is where the roof is for this particular tube. And then I line it up with the inside of the die there. Set my pointer to 0. And this particular bend is 18 degrees, and because of the spring back on my bender, I add 5 degrees, and until you get way up here at the 100 plus, it works out really well. So I'm going to go 18 and 5, I'm going to go 23 degrees, and that should give me my first bend. Make sure I got that line straight up, and here we go. 23 degrees. Place this one. Hold the pin. Line up for the next bend. Since this is a continuation of the coming off that bar where the coming down to the back window, the orientation of the tubing stays the same. It's going to be with that at 12 o'clock. There. 0 set. Tighten this valve down again. And this one is 17 degrees plus our 5, so 22 this time. Pressure again. That gets, give you an idea what we're looking at. So that comes off the main tube, or the main hoop, comes back, clearing the headliner, and then it starts that bend where the rear window is, so bend into that. And then we're going to come down to this line, line up, and this will be the first kick, and this one's the one that's got to kick off. Actually, it kicks off towards the inside of the trunk there. So the thing will be to do is, now we got to get the orientation of the tube right. This is how it goes in this car, the way the car is sitting, with this rib towards me, or this welded seam towards me. And we're going to want this to kick back, kind of back towards the camera there. Now, one of the things I was thinking about is because of this angle, really what the goal is to get this bend at about a 45 degree angle, I think it was. Yeah, 45 degree, and get it pointed pretty close to it's nearly straight down. It's not quite. If I'd have left this a little longer on the other tube, I could have gotten a little more than a 45 degree bend out here. And the goal is once this kicks out, this is pointed nearly straight down. So what I was thinking about last after I bent the last one was thinking about bending this bend first, and with the seam pointed almost exactly the same direction. I get a 45 degree bend. One of the tricks here is we want to get, that should be just about dead on, but we want to make sure that bend is parallel with that other. So my die here is almost dead level, 0.1. We're at the same angle. Alright, that will work. So let's see what happens when we bend it this way. We're going to put a 45 degree bend in it. Close to that, because this tube is so short, it actually falls off the shoe. And that's where I quit on the other one. It fell off the shoe. Right there. Which is almost, adding the 5 gives us almost exactly a 45. If we just wanted a straight bend, that would get it. We would be done. We could notch this front end and we'd be ready to start getting it in place. But because I want it to kick back just a little bit, and it works out to about 30 degrees, I believe. I have to look at my notes again. But I want it to kick back this direction about 30 degrees. So my thinking by bending that one first was, as I bend this, I should be able to see when this is at the angle that I'm hoping for, or, you know, a little easier to see the angle. A little pressure on here. That's pretty good. Based on my notes here, should be an 18-degree bend plus the 5, so 22 degrees, 23 degrees. 23 degrees should get this to kick over where we want it. So we're gonna give it a shot. Hope I wrote it down right. Looks just about right. It's going to go up, come down, we'll have a kicker going back to the frame rail, and that'll be the first one in the box to set the battery or whatever else in. There you go. Now we're going to cut some holes in the rear deck and slide this in. Thought I'd show you my first roll bar here. This was the first roll bar I built for this Mustang. And the reason I changed it and built the other one is, I don't know if you can even see it here, there's a small bend here, small bend in the center, and a small bend here. Those are only about 2 or 3 degrees each. And then the big bends here, and as we get down lower on this leg, I put a couple bends in here trying to mimic the quarter panel skin. The interior quarter panel skin, and just didn't end up liking the way it looked with the sharper angles on it. So as I showed you with the one already in the car, what I really did is come back and I put it on a roller, and I rolled from here to here to give myself an arch. And then on the legs down here, instead of having these bends, I put one bend down here and a little less of a bend here, and that gave me my spacing. And then I rolled this distance so that it would be smoother. So this one would have worked, and if I wasn't quite so particular on what I wanted it to look like, I would have used it, but I am. So I'd show you that one, and then what I did was, after making that one, that's when I decided I wanted a little more complicated. So same thing with that down bar, I made a mock-up of my roll bar. And I just used the 5-inch die here, or a 5-inch radius rather, here for my, so that it would match my die. And same here, and then you can see it here, it's pretty subtle, but there's a roll in it here, and a roll in it here. And of course I did all that just by hand, and then just mimicked it with the roller on the tubing. And I basically made half the roll bar, found the center of the roof, got everything the way I liked it in distances, and then when I made the roll bar, I knew I was able to measure, I knew how much rod I started with here, and it was longer at the time, and when I cut it off, I just measured how much I cut off, subtracted that, and then I knew how much tubing I would need. And again, I try and keep this close to the center of the roll bar, and then I got all my measurements. I use you can either, like on this die, I can just subtract 3/4 of an inch and I get really close to where my bins are. There's also a really cool software package that works on your iPad or on a computer. It's called Bend It. I think it's at bendit.com. And it's free. You just tell it your radius and all that, and You can program it in, it'll tell you how much tubing you need. And then once I did it, then I just flipped it over, wrote my same markings out on the other one, just like I did this other tubing, and bent one side and then went backwards and bent the other side. So, and it came out dead on, and that's the tube that's in there. So next I'm going to go ahead and get my holes cut in that rear deck, get this other tubing in, and then I'll start working on my forward ones.
Thanks for watching Allison Customs Project Car TV. Like us on Facebook and check us out at AllisonCustomsOnline.com.